Jenny Owens had a rule. She had several rules actually. Rules about keeping her workspace organized and her deadlines early and her responses brief and professional. Rules about what she wore to important meetings and how she framed her analysis so no one could pick it apart. But the most important rule, the one she had written into the Notes app on her phone 2 years ago on a quiet Tuesday morning when she sat at her desk and looked up from her screen as Ethan Cole crossed the office floor and realized she was in serious trouble, was this one. Do not feel anything you cannot take back. For 2 years she had lived by it. She had sat in glass-walled conference rooms and presented her work with steady hands and a clear voice. She had answered his questions with precision and listened to his feedback without flinching. She had ridden elevators beside him in silence and kept her eyes on the button panel. She had laughed at exactly the right moments and gone quiet at exactly the right moments, and she had gone home each night and kept a door inside herself firmly shut. She had been very good at the rule. Until Thursday night. It started the way most things started, with work. He had called her at 6:58 about the third quarter projection model she had sent at 4:30, and he had questions, which was normal, and she had answered all of them clearly and efficiently, which was also normal, and the call ran 21 minutes and 43 seconds. At the end of it, she pressed the end call button on her phone screen. She watched the timer stop. She set the phone face down on the kitchen counter. She had already changed out of her day's cobalt blue blazer the moment she walked through the door, and she was in her soft green loungewear now, which was how she knew her brain had already decided it was evening and the work part of the day was done. She walked into the living room where Brooke LeDuc was already pulling the cork from a bottle of white wine and Tara Mitchell was raiding the kitchen cabinet like she had a legal agreement permitting this, which in every way that mattered between old friends she did. First Thursday of every month. Girls' night. The one appointment in Jenny's calendar she never moved and never canceled, not for deadlines and not for anything else. She lives, Tara said without looking up from the cabinet. Work call, Jenny said dropping onto the couch. With who? Tara said. Still not a question. Cole. Both of them looked at her. Stop, Jenny said. I did not say a word, Brooke said, settling beside her with 2 glasses. Your eyebrows said several things. Tara turned the music down 2 notches. That was the signal. That was how Jenny knew tonight was not going to stay light. She took the glass Brooke held out. She looked at the window. The Brooklyn street below was quiet. A bus rolled past and the light from its windows swept across the ceiling for a moment and then was gone. Okay, Brooke said. Talk. There is nothing to talk about, Jenny said. Jenny. Brooke. Tara came and sat on the other end of the sectional and tucked her feet under herself and waited. Tara had a gift for waiting. She could outlast almost anyone in silence. Jenny set her glass on the coffee table. She pressed her lips together. She breathed out slowly through her nose. I am in love with him, she said. And it is destroying me. No one moved. A car passed outside. A siren rose 2 blocks away and faded into the distance. I know exactly how that sounds, Jenny said before either of them could speak. He's my boss. He is a billionaire. He operates in a world that is genuinely not mine, and I have always understood that clearly. But 3 years is a long time to sit across from someone and slowly realize that everything you told yourself about what you were feeling was a lie. Brooke reached over and took her hand without saying anything. I told myself it was admiration at first, Jenny continued. He is brilliant and that part was always true. Then I told myself it was just respect and that part was also true. But then I started noticing everything else. He defended my work in the Q2 board meeting when 2 senior members tried to talk over my presentation. He stayed late with me until past midnight before the Henderson account deadline and brought me food without being asked because he had noticed I had not left my desk since 1 in the afternoon. He remembers how I take my coffee. He remembers things I said in passing 3 months later, in conversations I had completely forgotten. I told myself he was like that with everyone. Is he? Tara asked very quietly. Patrick told me once, Jenny said, after a very long day that in 8 years of working beside Ethan Cole, he had never seen him go out of his way for someone the way he does for me. I did not know what to do with that. So I put it somewhere and kept moving. How long have you known? Brooke asked. That it is love. Almost 2 years that I have been certain. Before that I called it other things. She breathed in. But I will never do anything with it. I need you to understand that. I'm not going to say anything to him. I'm not going to act on it. I have accepted that this is just something I carry. Some people carry things like this their whole lives and they are perfectly fine. Are you fine? Tara asked. The question sat in the air. Jenny looked at the ceiling. Then back at the window. Then down at her hands. Some days, she said. Today was a heavy day. Some days it gets very heavy. And tonight I just needed to say it somewhere outside my own head. Tara got up from her end of the couch, walked across and sat beside her. She did not say anything. She just sat there. Jenny looked at her. Then she let out a quiet laugh and leaned her head on Tara's shoulder. I am fine, she said again. I know, Tara said. 43 blocks north, in the parking garage beneath Cole Capital's Midtown headquarters, Ethan Cole sat in the back seat of his car with his phone held beside his ear. He had not moved in 22 minutes. He had pressed what he thought was the end call button. He had slid the phone into his coat pocket. He had reached back in for it later to send Patrick a message, and when he pulled it out and looked at the screen, the call was still active. Still running. Timer still counting. He had been lifting his thumb to press end. Then he heard Tara turn the music down. Then he heard Jenny's voice. Not the clear, even, professional voice she used in the office. A different voice entirely. Quieter. Tired. The kind of voice a person uses when every layer they wear in public has finally been set down. He should have ended the call. He knew that. He had been about to. He did not. He sat in the dark of the car for the next 43 minutes and listened to Jenny Owens say things she had been carrying alone for 2 years. When the call finally ended on her side, he sat in the silence and stared at the concrete pillar in front of the car for a long time. Ethan Cole also had a rule. Simpler than hers, though it came from the same place. Do not complicate the lives of people who trust you. He had told himself Jenny trusted him as a fair employer. That was worth protecting. His feelings, whatever they were his to manage, not hers to absorb. He had made that decision deliberately, and he had stood by it for almost 2 years, and he had told himself it was right. He had been wrong about one thing. She was already carrying it. She had been carrying it just as long as he had. He looked out the car window at the city passing beyond the garage entrance. The driver did not ask any questions. Ethan did not offer any. He looked at his phone. He looked at the call log. Tomorrow he had to go to work. She would be there. And nothing was the same as it was before tonight. If you have ever loved someone from a distance, chosen to carry it quietly rather than risk the one good thing in your life, you already know exactly how Jenny feels right now. Do you think Ethan will pretend he heard nothing? Or will this change everything they have both built? Subscribe and drop your answer in the comments. This story is only getting started. Jenny arrived at Cole Capital at 8:13 on Friday morning, 14 minutes earlier than usual. She had not slept past 3. From midnight to 3 she had run the same quiet loop inside her head. The button, the screen going dark, the timer stopping. She was certain she had pressed end. She was mostly certain. By the time the first gray light came through her bedroom window, she had decided she was certain, and that certainty was going to carry her through this day if she had to hold it with both hands every single minute. She wore her maroon blazer over a cream blouse and high-waisted navy trousers. She had chosen it because maroon was a color that felt grounded. Steady. She needed steady. The elevator to the 44th floor was empty when she stepped in. She watched her reflection in the polished doors, adjusting nothing. She looked fine. She looked exactly like a person who had slept 8 full hours and felt entirely normal about everything in her life. She was going to be fine. The floor was already stirring when she arrived. Analysts settling at desks, coffee cups in hand, the low murmur of early conversations running through the open workspace. Jenny greeted 2 colleagues by name, smiled at a third, and went to her desk. She set her bag down. She opened her laptop. She pulled up the third quarter report and started working. She did not look toward the far end of the floor where the executive suite sat behind glass. She did not. At 9:15, Patrick Webb passed her desk and paused. "Good morning, Jenny," he said. "Morning, Patrick." He looked at her for a half-second longer than usual. Then he smiled and moved on. She told herself it meant nothing. Patrick noticed everything. It was his gift and sometimes just his habit. The morning briefing was at 10. 8 people gathered around the long conference table. 4 senior analysts, 2 junior associates, Diana Hargrove at the far left with her hands folded and her ash blonde hair pulled back, and Ethan Cole at the head. Jenny sat midway down the right side. Ethan ran the briefing the way he always ran it. He worked through the agenda in order. He asked precise questions and listened without interrupting. He made 2 decisions and pushed 2 others to the following week. He was, as he always was, efficient and completely unreadable. He did not look at Jenny any more than he looked at anyone else. She told herself this was good. Normal. Proof that the call had ended when she thought it had. The briefing wrapped at 11:05. People gathered their things. "Good numbers on the Henderson follow-up," Ethan said. He was not looking at anyone specifically. He was looking at something on his tablet. But he said it in the direction where Jenny was standing, and she was the only one in that room who had worked the Henderson follow-up. "Thank you," she said. He looked up briefly. Their eyes met for less than 2 seconds. "Keep the same format for Q4, he said. "It works." "I will," she said. He looked back at his tablet. She picked up her notebook and walked out. Normal. Completely normal. He commented on her work regularly because her work merited it. She was not going to read meaning into professional acknowledgement. She went back to her desk and worked through lunch. At 2:30, Diana Hargrove stopped beside her station. Diana wore an ivory blazer today, the kind of piece that looked effortless and cost more than most people's rent. She had the kind of smile that registered warm before you had time to question what was behind it. "Working through lunch again?" Diana said. "I like to stay ahead," Jenny said. "Of course you do." Diana glanced at Jenny's screen, not long enough to read anything specific. "How are you finding things lately, overall?" "Well, the Q4 model is coming along." "Good." Diana tilted her head slightly. "You know, your name has come up at the senior level recently. In a positive context. There are conversations happening about where the most talented people should be placed going forward. People have noticed you." "I appreciate hearing that," Jenny said. "Keep doing what you are doing." Diana smiled once more and moved on. Jenny watched her go, then turned back to her screen. The afternoon continued. At 4:50, the floor had mostly cleared for the day. Jenny was still at her desk, finalizing a footnote in the Q4 model, when she became aware of someone stopping at the edge of the analyst's pool. She looked up. Ethan Cole was standing there in his coat, ready to leave. He was looking at something in his hand, possibly his phone. Then he looked up. Directly at her. He said nothing. He did not wave or nod. He simply looked at her for 2 or 3 seconds, the way a person looks at something they are thinking about very carefully. Not the way a supervisor looks at an employee. Something else that she did not have a clean word for. Then he turned and walked to the elevator. Jenny looked back at her screen. Her footnote cursor was blinking. She sat completely still for a moment. Then she saved the document, closed her laptop, gathered her things and left. On the subway back to Brooklyn, she stood with one hand on the rail and thought about that look. She knew his professional patterns. She knew what a professional glance looked like coming from him, and she knew what something else looked like, and she was good at reminding herself the distinction did not matter. She knew what that look was. She did not know what to do with knowing. She told herself she was projecting. That fear was filling gaps with what it wanted to find. She almost believed it by the time she reached her stop. Almost. At home, she changed out of the maroon blazer. She cooked and ate. She called her mother and talked for 40 minutes about small comfortable things. Then she sat on her couch and opened her recent calls. And she found exactly what she had been afraid she would find. The call log was specific and entirely unforgiving. Her side of the call ended at 7:12. But the connection itself, the live line between her phone and his, had stayed open. The log showed the call terminating at 7:55. 43 minutes. She had given him 43 minutes of everything she had never allowed herself to say. Jenny sat on the couch with her phone in both hands and looked at the screen for a long time. Then she called Brooke. "I need you to come over," she said. "Right now?" "Yes." Brooke arrived 20 minutes later with Tara, which meant she had called Tara the second they hung up. Jenny was still on the couch. She had not moved except to unlock the door. She showed them the log. Tara let out a slow, careful breath. Brooke sat down hard. "Okay," Brooke said. 43 minutes, Jenny said. "Did he say or do anything today?" Tara asked. "Nothing obvious. He ran the briefing normally. He commented on the Henderson report. He looked at me for about 3 seconds when he was leaving." She paused. "It was a different look." "Different how?" Brooke asked. "Not the way he usually looks at something he is assessing. More like..." She searched for the right word and did not find one. "I do not know. Just different." Tara looked at her steadily. "He heard it." "We do not know that," Brooke said carefully. "Maybe his phone was in his pocket and the call was technically active, but he had already stepped away from it. Maybe he never heard a word." "Maybe," Jenny said. "Or," Tara said, "he heard every word. And right now he is sitting somewhere deciding what he is going to do about it." Jenny put her face in her hands. "That is the version I cannot sit with," she said, voice muffled. "Which part of it?" Tara asked. Jenny lifted her head. "The part where he heard me say I love him and now he has to manage that information while also being my employer. And whatever he decides, it changes something I spent 3 years building at that firm. I love that job, Tara. That job is mine. I worked for it. If this costs me that. It is not going to cost you that, Brooke said firmly. You cannot know that. Jenny. Brooke turned to face her fully. You have 3 years of excellent performance reviews. You have never given anyone in that building a single reason to question your professionalism. Whatever happens, whatever he heard or did not hear, that record does not disappear. Jenny nodded slowly. She knew Brooke was right. She also knew that knowing something and feeling it were different processes that did not always run together. What do I do Monday? She asked. You go in, Tara said. You do your work. You act normal. And if he brings it up? You deal with that when it happens. Not before. You will wear yourself out spending the whole weekend preparing for something that might not even come. Jenny nodded again. They spent Saturday together at the apartment. 2 films, a long lunch they cooked together, comfortable noise. Brooke reorganized Jenny's spice cabinet because Brooke always reorganized something when she was nervous and needed to feel useful, and Jenny let her because it was oddly grounding to watch someone manage something small when everything else felt large. At 3 in the afternoon, Jenny's phone rang. The screen showed, Mom, Philadelphia. She answered. Hi, she said. You sound like something is sitting on your chest, her mother said immediately. Jenny smiled despite herself. I am fine, Mom. Gloria Owens made a particular sound when she was listening but not yet persuaded. You want to talk about it? Not yet. Just not yet. All right. I will be here when you are ready. Are you eating? Brooke is here. She reorganized my spice cabinet. Her mother laughed, warm and full. That girl. Tell her I said hello. Pause. Jenny. Whatever this is, you are going to handle it the way you handle everything. You were raised to know your worth. Do not let any situation make you forget that. Jenny breathed in slowly. Yes, ma'am. Good. Call me Sunday. After she hung up, she sat for a moment with the phone resting in her lap and felt something settle, just a small degree, just enough. Sunday passed quietly. She called her mother as promised, and they talked about the neighborhood and a neighbor's new dog and a film Gloria had watched twice in the same week, and Jenny did not mention Ethan at all. Sunday night, she ironed her emerald green blazer and set it out with cream-colored trousers and her good earrings. She went to bed at 10:30. She slept. Not perfectly, but she slept. Monday morning she had a plan. Go in, do the work, observe, say nothing. Keep the door shut and let the facts come to her instead of going to them. It was a reasonable plan. It lasted until 11:40 on Monday morning. Monday at Cole Capital was exactly the kind of morning Jenny needed. She arrived at 8:08. She set up her workspace in the same order she always did. Laptop centered, notebook to the left, water bottle to the right. She answered 3 overnight emails from the West Coast team before most of the floor had fully settled. By 11 o'clock she had completed 2 sections of the Q4 model that she had been building toward all the previous week. She was good at her job. Whatever happened in the rest of her life, the work stayed solid. She had always been able to lean on that. At 11:30, Patrick appeared beside her desk. Jenny, Ethan is ready for the one-on-one review when you are. She had nearly forgotten it was on the calendar. Monthly review, 3rd Monday, 11:30. She had scheduled it herself 6 weeks ago. Of course, she said. She gathered her notebook and laptop and followed Patrick down the floor. Ethan's office was at the far corner, floor-to-ceiling glass on 2 sides looking out over Midtown. He was standing at the wall-mounted screen when she came in, looking at a financial projection chart. He gestured to the chair across from his desk without turning. 1 minute, he said. Take your time, she said. She sat. She set up her materials and turned to the review page in her notebook, everything organized and ready. He came to his desk, opened his laptop and began. The review was thorough. He went through the Q4 model progress section by section. He had 2 specific questions about her methodology in the 3rd section, and he listened carefully to her explanation before approving the approach without qualification. He moved through the Henderson follow-up, confirmed the format, asked her to replicate it for the next 2 portfolio clients. He noted that her turnaround time had been consistently ahead of the benchmark and that 3 senior partners had specifically mentioned the clarity of her written analysis in the last quarter. It was, in every measurable way, a strong review. Jenny took her notes and answered his questions and felt herself relax into the rhythm of it. This was solid ground. This was the thing that would always be true regardless of anything else. That covers everything on my side, he said at the end of the standard items. Anything you want to raise? Nothing from my side. The Q4 model will be in final draft by Thursday. Good. He closed his laptop. A short pause. How are you finding things overall? Workload, team dynamic? Well, No concerns. The team has been strong this quarter. He nodded. She began to close her notebook and reach for her laptop. One more thing, he said. She paused. He was looking at his desk. Not at her, at the surface of the desk, the way someone looks at something they are organizing their thoughts around before speaking. The conference in Boston last February, he said. You wore a blue dress to the Thursday evening dinner. You mentioned to someone that you had almost canceled because the week had been difficult, and that getting out of the city turned out to be exactly what you needed. The room went very quiet. Jenny held herself perfectly still. The Boston conference was 10 months ago. She had told that story to one person. She had told it to Tara on a Tuesday phone call because Tara had asked how the conference went and Jenny had been tired and had talked more freely than she usually did. She had not told anyone at the office that story. She had not told Ethan. She looked at him. He looked back at her now, direct and steady, holding her gaze the way he did when he was making sure something had landed clearly. That sounds right, she said. Her voice came out even. I thought so, he said simply. He looked back at his screen. Thursday for the Q4 draft. Thank you, Jenny. She picked up her things. She walked out. She went straight to the end-of-hall bathroom, turned on the cold tap, and stood with her wrists under the running water for a full 3 minutes. He knew the Boston story because he had heard it. She had told it on that Thursday night. She remembered now. Tara had asked how the trip was and Jenny had said it turned out to be exactly what she needed, even though I almost did not go, and I wore the blue dress to the Thursday dinner and felt like a human being for the first time in weeks. He had heard that. He had heard all of it. And just now, quietly and without any drama, he had told her that he knew. She dried her hands. She walked back to her desk. She sat down. She opened her laptop. She worked for the rest of the afternoon without stopping, because working was the one thing she could do while she figured out what was going to happen next. Tuesday morning, Diana Hargrove arrived at the office at 7:45. That was 45 minutes earlier than her usual arrival, which was itself 20 minutes earlier than most of the floor. Patrick noticed because Patrick noticed everything, but he said nothing because nothing about Diana's early arrival was his business to comment on. The first thing she did was send a meeting request to Ethan Cole for 8:15. It came through as urgent. The meeting lasted 14 minutes. Patrick was not present for it. Diana's proposal was simple. There was a senior analyst position opening at the firm's Dallas satellite office, a real position that needed filling. She framed it carefully. A significant career advancement opportunity for one of the firm's most promising junior-senior analysts. A role that would give Jenny Owens full regional portfolio responsibility for the first time. Dallas was growing. The firm needed someone strong there. Ethan listened. He was already thinking about the Q3 board report he had to sign off on before noon, and the phone call with the Singapore office at 2, and Patrick had mentioned a conflict in his afternoon schedule that needed resolving. He was listening but he was not fully in the room. He said he would review it. Diana thanked him and walked out. She went to her office, angled her glass blinds mostly closed and sat down. She was patient. She had always been patient. She had watched Ethan Cole build this firm for 6 years and she had been very careful about the face she showed him. Fair. Practical. Always reasonable. She had managed things and people in situations that required precision, and she was very good at it. She had also watched the way Ethan moved differently in rooms where Jenny Owens was present. She had watched him extend meetings that should have ended earlier when Jenny was the one presenting. She had noticed the coffee order he occasionally had Patrick bring to Jenny's desk on long deadline days. She had filed all of it away very carefully. She did not intend to let whatever this was become something permanent. By 9:30, the Dallas paperwork was sitting in Carl Briggs's inbox in HR, marked as a preliminary proposal pending Ethan's formal sign-off. Diana had framed it to Carl as a near-certain approval, moving through the pipeline. Jenny arrived at her desk at 8:20, made coffee, and started her day. She did not know any of this. The morning was clean. She had a good stretch of focused work on the Q4 model and by 11 had moved it to the stage she had been working toward. She went to the kitchen for a second coffee at 11:45, passed Patrick in the hallway, and he gave her a look that she noticed but could not read. She thought about it and kept moving. At 12:10 an email appeared in her inbox from HR, Carl Briggs, Director of Human Resources. It was flagged informational, not yet official. It said that a senior analyst position at the Dallas satellite office was being considered for her, described as a meaningful step in her career trajectory, and asked her to confirm receipt of the preliminary information. She read it 3 times. Then she forwarded it to Tara with one line. Look at this. Tara called during Jenny's lunch break. Jenny took it in the stairwell on the 39th floor, the quiet one nobody used. Dallas, Tara said. Dallas, Jenny confirmed. Her voice was very steady. Did you ask for this? Is this something you raised at any point? No. I have never mentioned anything about a transfer. This is the first I have heard of it. And it shows up the week after the call. Yes. Pause. Who proposes a move like this? Tara asked. Senior staffing proposals come from VP level or above, or directly from Ethan. But Ethan does not move top analysts to satellite offices. He does not reassign people who are producing results. That is not a pattern he uses. So a VP, Tara said. Jenny said nothing. She had thought about Diana the moment she finished reading the email. She had thought about the smile on Monday afternoon, the way Diana had said your name has been coming up at the senior level. She had thought about how early Diana had arrived this morning, which the receptionist had mentioned in passing while Jenny was getting her coffee. I do not know that yet with certainty, Jenny said carefully. I am going to wait for the formal proposal. I am going to keep doing my work. I am not going to act on a feeling without facts in front of me. Jenny. I know what this might be, she said. But I need facts, not suspicion. She went back upstairs. At 3:20, Patrick was standing at the edge of the analyst's pool. Not approaching anyone in particular. Just standing in a way that was not his usual purposeful movement. He made eye contact with Jenny for a moment. Then he looked toward the executive suite. Then he moved on. 30 minutes later, a calendar notification appeared on Jenny's phone. A private one-on-one with Ethan Cole, 9 o'clock the following morning. Subject, follow-up. She accepted it. That night she called Brooke and then Tara. She sat on her couch in her green loungewear and worked through what she knew and what she suspected and what she needed to walk in ready for tomorrow. She went to bed at 11. She lay awake until 2 looking at the ceiling. By 5 in the morning she had decided one thing clearly. Whatever walked through that door tomorrow, she was walking in with her head up. She had built something real at that firm. She had earned everything she had there. Nobody was going to take that from her without a direct conversation. She got up at 5:30. She ironed her cobalt blue blazer. She was ready. She wore cobalt blue on Wednesday morning. Over a simple white blouse and cream-colored trousers. Her natural hair in a high puff, which was how she wore it when she needed to feel most like herself. Clear. Ready. She arrived at 8:58. Patrick was at his desk. He met her eyes as she passed and gave her a brief nod that meant something without specifying what. At 9 o'clock, she knocked on the glass frame of Ethan's office door. Come in, he said. He was at the window. He did that sometimes when he was working through something, stood at the window and looked at the city below while his mind went somewhere else. He did not turn immediately. She stood near the chair she normally used in meetings. She did not sit until he indicated. He turned from the window and looked at her fully. Then he said, "Close the door, please." She reached back and pulled the glass door shut. The office was soundproofed from the floor outside. People could see them through the glass but not hear anything. He did not go to his desk. He stood near the edge of it, hands in his pockets, and he looked at her without looking away. "I owe you an honest conversation," he said. She held herself still. "The call on Thursday evening," he said. I pressed what I thought was end. I did not check the screen carefully before I put it in my pocket. When I pulled it back out later, the connection was still active. She looked at him. "I heard your voice," he continued. "Not the way you sound in here. A different way. And I should have ended it the moment I realized. I did not." The room was very quiet. "I heard everything," he said. "All 43 minutes. The words sat in the air between them. "I am telling you now because you deserve to know," he said. "Not because it benefits me. Because you have been carrying uncertainty about it for 5 days and that is not fair to you. I will not walk around knowing what I know and leave you in the dark about it." She breathed in slowly. "All right," she said. The word came out steady. She was surprised by how steady. "Are you angry?" he asked. She thought about it honestly. "Not angry. I am." She looked for the right word and took her time finding it. "I am very exposed. And I spent most of the last 5 days convincing myself you probably did not hear any of it. And now I am standing here trying to figure out what this means for my position here. Professionally. What happens next?" He held her gaze. "Nothing happens to your position. Nothing changes your standing at this firm. What you said on that call was a private conversation that I should not have heard. You said it to your friends, not to me. I am not going to hold that against you in any form." She breathed again. "But that is not all I wanted to say," he said. She looked at him. He moved from where he had been standing to a position slightly closer. Not across a desk. Not behind a barrier. Just two people in a room with the door closed. "What you said," he said. "About carrying it. About it being heavy some days." He paused. "I have been carrying the same thing for almost 2 years." The words moved through her slowly. "I knew what I felt," he said. "I made a decision not to act on it. You work for me. The difference in what I can do and what you can do in this building is real, and I was not going to put you in a position where you felt pressure that you never chose. That was the reasoning. I told myself it was right." She did not move. "But I heard you say you had accepted it," he said. "That you were living with it. That you had decided this was just something you carry." He stopped. "And I realized that I had made a decision for both of us. I had decided what was best for you without giving you any of the information you would have needed to make that choice yourself. That was wrong. I am sorry for it." She stood in the quiet of his office and let that land. "You have been carrying this for 2 years, she said. "Yes. And you said nothing." "Correct. Because you thought you were protecting me." "Yes." She let out a long breath. Not frustration. Not relief. Just a breath. The kind that comes out when something heavy has been set down and the air can finally move again. "I do not know what to do with all of this right now," she said. "I want to be honest about that. I need time to think." "Take whatever time you need," he said. "I'm not asking for anything from you. I just needed you to have the truth." She nodded. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said quietly, "For what it is worth, I am glad you told me. Because carrying it alone was the part that got heavy." He held her gaze and something in his posture shifted, just slightly, like a person who has been bracing against something for a long time and has finally been told they can stop. "The Dallas proposal," he said. "It has been pulled. You are not going anywhere." She looked at him. "I will explain that separately," he said. "But I wanted you to know." She picked up her things. "The Q4 draft will be ready Thursday," she said. One corner of his mouth moved just barely. "I know it will." She walked out. She went back to her desk. She sat down. She opened the Q4 model. She worked. She was shaking very slightly in a way that did not affect her hands. Not from fear. From something else entirely. Something that had no name yet but felt, for the first time in 2 years, like a door opening rather than one being firmly shut. "Are you still watching?" Because Ethan just told her the truth. He heard every word. And then he told her he has been carrying the same feeling for 2 years. "But here is what you do not know yet. Someone in that building has been watching every single moment of this. And she is not going to let it go without a fight. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. Because what happens next will make your jaw drop." Diana Hargrove found out on Thursday afternoon. She had gone back to Carl Briggs in HR to check on the Dallas proposal timeline, and Carl, careful and procedural as always, had told her with some confusion that the proposal had been pulled from the review pipeline. A message had come from Ethan Cole's office on Wednesday evening. The position was no longer being considered for internal placement at this time. Diana thanked Carl in a warm, even voice. She walked back to her office. She closed the glass blinds. She sat at her desk and thought for a long time. She had managed things at Cole Capital for 4 years. She had made herself indispensable in ways that were hard to point to directly but very easy to feel. She had managed Ethan's board correspondence during the reorganization the previous year. She had managed the administrative calendar for the senior executive team during the transition period. She knew how the firm's internal structures moved. She knew where the gaps were. She had placed Jenny Owens in one of those gaps. And now the gap was being closed. This was no longer something that could be managed quietly. She made a call on Friday morning early before most of the floor had arrived. The call was to Harold Finch's assistant, and she requested a brief meeting with the chairman at the earliest opportunity. She said it was a matter of professional concern that required his direct attention. Harold Finch agreed to meet her on Friday afternoon late. Diana walked into that meeting with a single manila folder and a very controlled expression. She did not shout. She did not accuse directly. She laid out a picture. She said she had observed, over a period of time, what appeared to be a developing personal relationship between the firm's CEO and one of his direct reports. She said she felt it was her responsibility as a senior officer of the firm to raise this concern formally. She said she was not making definitive claims. She was raising a concern that the board should be aware of. Harold Finch listened to everything. He asked 2 questions. He thanked her. When she left, he sat alone in his office for a while. Then he called the 2 other board members who were in the city that week. And then he called his assistant and asked her to schedule an emergency board session for Monday morning. Jenny found out from Patrick. He appeared at her desk at the end of Friday afternoon, when the floor was mostly empty, and he leaned slightly forward and said very quietly, "There is going to be a board session Monday morning. Formal. You and Ethan have both been notified by end of day. The notification is going out now." She looked at him. "What is it about?" she said. He pressed his lips together for a moment. Diana Hargrove went to Harold Finch. Jenny looked at her screen. She let out a slow, controlled breath. Conflict of interest. That is the framing she used. She nodded once. "Do you understand what she is implying?" Patrick asked. "Yes," Jenny said. "She has no evidence," Patrick said. "Because there is nothing to have evidence of. But the board has to respond to a formal concern from a senior officer." "I know," Jenny said. Patrick looked at her for a moment longer. "You should know that Ethan is being informed right now. He is not going to stay quiet in that room, Jenny. He should be careful about what he says in that room," she said. "This affects his firm." "He is aware of that," Patrick said. "He is also aware of what he is willing to say and what he is not." The formal notification arrived in Jenny's email at 4:58, 2 minutes before close of business. It was from Harold Finch's office and it requested her attendance at a board session Monday morning at 9, in connection with a formal concern regarding professional conduct at the firm. It said she was welcome to bring any relevant documentation. It said the session was not a disciplinary hearing at this stage. It said the board valued the firm's culture of integrity. She read it twice. Then she called Tara. "Monday morning," she said. Tara was quiet for a moment. "Okay. What do you need?" "I need to spend this weekend going through 3 years of performance reviews, project records and documented work output," Jenny said. "And I need to organize it clearly enough to lay in front of people who have never looked at any of it before." "I will come over tomorrow morning," Tara said. "Thank you. Brooke too? Please." She hung up. She stared at her screen for a moment. Then she started pulling files. She worked until 8 that evening at her desk on the 44th floor, while the city outside moved through its Friday night below her. She was not afraid. Not yet. She was focused, which was what she did when she needed to be, because focus was something she had always been able to find. But when she got home that night and changed out of her cobalt blazer and sat down on her couch in the silence of her apartment, she let herself feel it for exactly 10 minutes. The unfairness of it. The way one person's agenda could reach into a life you had spent 3 years building carefully, and put pressure on everything at once. Then she got up, made tea and went back to her laptop. She had work to do. Patrick Webb had been carrying something for 6 months. He was not a person who talked much. He had been Ethan Cole's assistant for 8 years and that length of time had taught him 2 things above all others. That the right information shared at the wrong moment could do more damage than silence, and that some things needed to be kept until the moment arrived when they could actually help. He had been waiting for that moment for 6 months. On Sunday evening, the night before the board session, he texted Jenny and asked if she could meet him at the coffee shop 2 blocks from Cole Capital at 7 in the morning. He said he had something she needed to know before the session. She was already there when he arrived at 7, sitting at a corner table with a coffee in front of her and her red blazer folded over the chair beside her. She was wearing a maroon blouse and looked like someone who had slept very little but intended to function anyway. He sat across from her. He ordered a coffee. He set his bag on the floor and folded his hands on the table. "I need to tell you something I should have told you sooner," he said. "I have been waiting for the right moment. I think this is it." "All right," she said. 6 months ago, Patrick said, last September Ethan wrote a letter. A formal letter addressed to the board of directors of Cole Capital. I typed the final draft for him and prepared it for distribution. She looked at him. "It was a resignation letter," he said. He stated his intention to step down as CEO, effective upon the board's identification of a suitable successor, and he gave his reasons. Jenny was very still. "One of the reasons he listed," Patrick said carefully, "was that he had developed strong personal feelings for a member of his direct professional team, and that he was not willing to act on those feelings while he held the position of authority he did. He said he could not pursue something real with someone he had power over, and that rather than suppress what he felt indefinitely, he intended to remove the imbalance by removing himself from the role." The coffee shop was warm and bright around them. A couple talked quietly at the table by the window. A barista ran the steam wand at the counter. Ordinary morning sounds. "That letter never reached the board," Patrick said. Jenny held his gaze. "During the administrative reorganization last fall," he said, Ethan had delegated the task of coordinating board correspondence to Diana Hargrove for a period of about 3 months. It was temporary and it was practical. She had the time and the administrative access, and Ethan trusted the process because nothing in that channel had ever needed close monitoring before. He paused. Diana intercepted the letter, he said. She destroyed the original. It never went out. The sound in the coffee shop continued on around them, ordinary and indifferent. Ethan sent it on a Thursday, Patrick said. By the following Monday he had received no acknowledgement from the board. He followed up with me and I found, after some digging, that no record of outgoing correspondence on that date existed in the system for that distribution list. He assumed there had been a technical error. He had already begun questioning whether the resignation was the right move. Without the letter having gone out, the board session he had anticipated never materialized, and over the weeks that followed he pulled back from the decision. He told himself he had been acting on emotion. He told himself staying was the better choice. Jenny breathed slowly. He does not know the letter was intercepted, Patrick said. He thinks it was lost in a system error. I only found out the truth 3 weeks after the fact, when I found the original draft in a deleted folder that Diana had not fully cleared. She had used the firm's centralized document management system to mark it removed, but the trash queue purges on a 30-day cycle and I found it before it was gone. He reached into his bag and placed a folded paper on the table between them. I kept a copy, he said. She looked at it. I did not know what to do with it at the time, he said. Bringing it to Ethan felt like it might push him toward a decision he had already retreated from. I did not want to be responsible for that. And without something forcing the issue, I kept thinking the right moment would come naturally. He looked at her. I think this is it. Jenny looked at the folded paper for a long moment. Then she picked it up. She opened it. The letterhead was Cole capitals. The date was the previous September. The signature at the bottom, in Ethan's handwriting, was clear and deliberate. She read it once. Then she read it again. Then she set it carefully on the table. May I keep this? She asked. That is why I brought it, Patrick said. She folded it along its original creases and placed it in the inside pocket of her blazer. Does he know you have it? She asked. No. She nodded. She looked at her coffee for a moment. Then she looked back at Patrick. Thank you, she said. I know how long you have been sitting with this. Thank you for bringing it now. He nodded once. She picked up her coffee cup. She looked out the window at the street, where the city was already fully in motion, people moving in all directions with their own mornings ahead of them. Are you going to tell him? Patrick asked. Not before the session, she said. I need to think about how to use this correctly. I do not want to make a decision out of emotion. Patrick looked at her with something that was close to admiration but did not announce itself. You should know, he said, that Ethan is going to walk into that room tomorrow and say whatever needs to be said, regardless of what it costs him. I know, she said. She finished her coffee. She put on her red blazer. She had a board session to prepare for. The boardroom at Cole Capital was on the 45th floor, one level above the main office, and it had the same floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over Midtown that the executive suite had on the floor below. The table was long and dark-stained wood. The chairs were high-backed. The room felt like a place where decisions with large consequences were made, which was exactly what it was. Harold Finch was already seated at the head of the table when Jenny was shown in at 9:02. 2 other board members, a woman named Carol Prentice and a man named George Allard, both in their late 50s, sat to his left. All 3 had tablets and printed materials in front of them. Diana Hargrove was seated to the side, not at the main table but in one of the chairs along the wall. She had her hands folded in her lap and her expression was neutral and practiced. Jenny wore her red blazer over a crisp white blouse and navy trousers. She had her folder of documents in front of her and her notepad to the left. She had requested time to speak before any preliminary findings were discussed. Harold Finch had granted it. Ms. Owens, he said, the board understands you have requested to make a statement and to provide documentation for the record. You have the floor. Thank you, Chairman Finch, she said. She opened her folder. I have worked at Cole Capital for 3 years and 2 months, she said. I was hired as an analyst and promoted to senior analyst after 18 months, which was the fastest promotion in that role in the firm's history at the time. I want to give the board the factual record of that time. She placed the first set of documents at the center of the table. 3 years of annual performance reviews, printed cleanly. These are my performance reviews, she said. Each one was conducted by the standard review committee process. None of them involved Mr. Cole as the sole evaluator. My scores in every review cycle are documented here, and they are consistent. She placed the second set. These are the project records for every major account I have worked on in 3 years. 12 accounts. Completion rates, timeline accuracy, client retention outcomes, and partner commendations where they were given. You will see that my work product stands on its own without reference to any personal context. She placed the third set. These are the 3 quarterly performance benchmarks from the last year, with my name and metrics alongside the full analyst pool. I'm not asking you to take my word for anything. I am asking you to look at the numbers. She paused. She looked at the 3 board members, not at Diana. I have not had an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Cole, she said. I want to be clear about that. I am a professional who has spent 3 years doing the work I was hired to do and doing it well. Whatever concern has been brought to this board, my record is the clearest response I can give. She closed her folder. I do not have anything else to add, she said. I am happy to answer any questions you have about any of the documentation. Harold Finch looked at the documents in front of him. He was quiet for a moment. Ms. Owens, he said, how long have you been at this firm? 3 years and 2 months. In that time, have you ever been the subject of a formal complaint or disciplinary action? No. Have you ever filed a complaint? No. He nodded slowly. He glanced at the documents again. Carol Prentice leaned slightly forward. Ms. Owens, were you aware that a transfer to the Dallas satellite office was being considered for you? I received an informational email from HR last Tuesday, Jenny said. It was the first I had heard of it. I had not requested a transfer and had not been consulted. The proposal was subsequently withdrawn. Do you know why it was proposed? I have a suspicion, Jenny said carefully. But I am not going to state a suspicion as a fact in this room. Prentice nodded. George Allard looked at the performance records. These commendations from the Henderson and Whitmore accounts, he said. These came from the clients directly? Yes, Jenny said. Those are on file with the partnership team. Carl Briggs in HR can confirm the originals. Allard made a note. Harold Finch looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, Ms. Owens. We will take a brief recess and resume in 20 minutes. Jenny thanked them and stepped out. She went to the corridor outside the board floor and stood at the far window looking out at the city. Her hands were completely steady. Her breathing was even. She had done everything she could do in that room. The work had spoken. The numbers had spoken. Whether that was enough was a decision that belonged to 3 people at a long dark table, and she had given them everything she had to give. Patrick appeared in the corridor. You did well in there, he said. Thank you, she said. She meant it. He is here, Patrick said. Ethan arrived 20 minutes ago. He has been waiting. She turned. He does not know what to expect, Patrick said. But he is here. She nodded. The 20 minutes passed. The board session resumed. Jenny was already back at the table when the door opened. Harold Finch had just begun to speak, opening the second part of the session, when the door from the corridor side pushed open and Ethan Cole walked in. He was in his navy suit and a pale blue dress shirt, no tie, which was unusual for a formal board session. He looked like a man who had made a clear decision and had come to deliver it. Harold Finch stopped speaking. Mr. Cole, he said, you were not scheduled to appear at this stage. I know, Ethan said. I am here anyway. Harold Finch looked at him for a moment. Then he said, you have 5 minutes. Ethan walked to the table. He did not sit. He stood at the end of it, looking at the 3 board members evenly, and he did not look at Diana. What Diana Hargrove brought to this board, he said, is a mischaracterization of the facts. I want to be direct about that. Harold Finch folded his hands. There has been no inappropriate relationship between myself and Ms. Owens, Ethan said. There has been no conduct of any kind that constitutes misconduct by either of us. I want that to be on the record clearly and completely. He paused. I also want to be honest about something else, he said. Because I think the board deserves honesty more than it deserves a comfortable version of the truth. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. That is a resignation letter, he said. I wrote the first draft of it 6 months ago. I'm giving you the second draft today. The content is the same. Carol Prentice looked at the paper. I developed personal feelings for a member of this firm's team, Ethan said. I did not act on them. I made a decision to hold them back because I did not want to place someone I respected in a position where she felt any kind of unspoken pressure because of the authority I carry in this building. I thought that was the right call. I thought I was protecting her. He paused. I was wrong to make that decision without her input. I should have found a way to handle this that was honest and fair to both of us. I did not. I am responsible for that. He looked at Harold Finch directly. I am also not going to stand here and ask this firm to tolerate an environment where the person I am talking about is transferred to a different city because someone at this table decided to move her before I could say any of this out loud. He did not look at Diana when he said it. He did not need to. That is not acceptable. And I will not be part of a firm that operates that way. He straightened. I am submitting this letter because I will not hold a position of authority over someone I love, he said. That is not a dynamic either of us chose or should have to manage. If the board accepts my resignation, I will ensure a clean transition. If the board does not accept it, I will be asking for a formal protocol that allows both Ms. Owens and myself to continue our work here without either of us carrying this in silence. He looked at Jenny then. She was looking back at him. Steady. So. She never asked me for anything, he said, still looking at her. She never did a single thing wrong. She did her job and she did it better than anyone I have ever worked beside. Whatever happens in this room today, that is the truth and I will say it to anyone who asks. He stepped back. The room was entirely quiet. Harold Finch looked at the resignation letter on the table. He looked at Carol Prentice. He looked at George Allard. Then he looked at Diana Hargrove. Miss Hargrove, he said. Before we proceed, the transfer proposal you initiated for Ms. Owens last week. What was your basis for bringing that directly to HR rather than routing it through the standard staffing review process? Diana's expression did not change. I felt the timeline warranted moving quickly. I see, Harold Finch said. He looked at her for a long moment. We are going to take a full recess. Ms. Hargrove, I am going to ask you to remain available. There are some administrative questions I would like to follow up on directly. The IT team will be joining us. Diana's hands, still folded in her lap, went very slightly still. Of course, she said. Harold Finch turned to Jenny and Ethan. I will ask you both to wait outside. We will have a finding by end of morning. They waited in the corridor outside the board floor. Ethan stood at the window. Jenny sat in one of the two chairs along the wall. For the first few minutes neither of them said anything, and the quiet between them was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that exists between people who have both said everything and are now just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. You did not have to do that in there, Jenny said finally. Yes, I did, he said. You're firm, Ethan. I know what it is. He looked out at the city. I also know what it is worth and what it is not worth. And I am not going to sit in a position of authority over a person I love because it is easier than doing the harder thing. She looked at him. He turned from the window and looked back at her. I meant what I said in there, he said. Every word. About your work. About what I should have done differently. About what this is. I know, she said. Are you all right? He asked. She thought about it honestly, the way she always did. I think I will be, she said. Right now I am mostly still processing. He nodded. He came and sat in the other chair. Not too close. Just near. Patrick told me last night, he said, that you spoke to him Sunday morning. He came to me, she said. With the letter. Ethan was quiet for a moment. He kept a copy. He did. For 6 months. He was waiting for the right moment. She looked at her hands. The letter, Ethan. Why did you never mention it? When the board never responded, when it just disappeared, why did you not push harder to find out what happened? He was quiet. Because part of me was relieved, he said. I had written it in a moment of honesty and then I spent the following week second-guessing it. I told myself the silence was a sign. I told myself the right thing was to stay in the role and manage my feelings like a reasonable adult. He looked at his own hands. I was afraid, Jenny. Not of the feelings. Of what would happen if I acted on them and it went wrong. Of what it would cost you if it went wrong. You had built something real here and I did not want to be the person who disrupted that. She looked at him. You were trying to protect me again, she said. Yes. Without asking me if I wanted to be protected that way. He met her gaze. Yes, I know. She breathed out. We are going to have to stop doing things for each other without asking first. Something moved across his face. I think that is fair. The door to the board floor opened at 11:42. Harold Finch's assistant asked them both to come back in. The 3 board members were seated. Diana Hargrove was not in the room. Harold Finch removed his reading glasses and set them on the table. The board has reviewed the documentation provided by Ms. Owens and by Mr. Cole, he said. We have also completed a preliminary review of firm administrative correspondence records with the assistance of the IT department. He paused. We have found no evidence of misconduct by either Ms. Owens or Mr. Cole, he said. Ms. Owens's record at this firm is exemplary and the concern raised about her conduct is without factual foundation. Carol Prentice leaned forward slightly. We have also found evidence that official board correspondence was intercepted and withheld from its intended recipients during the administrative reorganization period last year. This is a serious breach of firm protocol and fiduciary responsibility. Ms. Hargrove's employment with Cole Capital has been terminated effective this morning, pending a full review of the scope of the interference. Jenny looked at the table in front of her and breathed slowly. Regarding the resignation letters, Harold Finch said. He looked at Ethan. The board declines to accept either submission. Mr. Cole, your leadership of this firm is not in question. Ms. Owens, your position here is not in question. He looked at both of them. What the board does require, he said, is a formal disclosure of the personal relationship and a conduct agreement that outlines how the professional context will be managed going forward. Standard protocol for this situation. We expect that document on our desks within 2 weeks. If both parties are in agreement with that process, we can close this session. Ethan looked at Jenny. Jenny looked at Ethan. Agreed, she said. Agreed, he said. Harold Finch nodded. Then we are adjourned. She called her mother from the sidewalk outside Cole Capital at 12:20, standing in the cool bright noon air with the city moving around her. Mom, she said when Gloria picked up. Jenny. Pause. You sound different. Good different. It is over, Jenny said. The thing I could not tell you about. It is over. And it went well. Gloria Owens was quiet for a moment. Then she said very softly, tell me everything. So Jenny did. She talked for 22 minutes standing there on the sidewalk and she told her mother everything from the beginning. The call, the girls' night, the 5 days of not knowing, the one-on-one meeting where Ethan told her he had heard, and Diana, and the board session, and the letter, and what Ethan had said in that room in front of everyone. When she finished, her mother was quiet for a moment. That man stood in front of a board of directors and said he loves you, Gloria said. Yes, Jenny said. Out loud. In a room full of people. Yes, Mom. Another pause. I like him already. Jenny laughed, a full real laugh, the first one in a week that came from all the way down. Tell me more about him, her mother said. Everything. He found her at her desk at 2:15. She had gone back upstairs after the call with her mother and worked through the afternoon because the Q4 model was still due Thursday and nothing about a board session changed a deadline. She was 3 sections from the end when she heard his footsteps and looked up. He was in his navy suit still. He had his coat over his arm, which meant he was done for the day and on his way out. I wanted to ask you something, he said, stopping beside her desk. Go ahead, she said. Dinner, he said. Not a work dinner. Not in the building. Somewhere outside of all of this. Just the two of us. He looked at her directly. When you are ready. No pressure. Whatever timeline you need. She looked at him for a moment. She thought about the rule she had written 2 years ago. Do not feel anything you cannot take back. She had been carrying that rule like a shield for 2 full years. She understood now why she had written it. She had been afraid. Afraid of what it would cost her. Afraid of what it would mean. Afraid of standing in a place she did not know how to navigate and finding she did not have the footing for it. But she was still standing. She had walked into a boardroom in her red blazer and laid 3 years of work on a table and let it speak, and she was still standing. She had heard the truth from the person she had been afraid to know the truth about, and she was still standing. This weekend, she said. Saturday. He looked at her. I know a place in Brooklyn, she said. Small. Not fancy. Good food. That sounds exactly right, he said. She smiled at him. The kind of smile that does not have any edges on it. He smiled back. The kind that made his whole face look different, younger and less like someone who spent his days holding things in. Thursday for the Q4 draft, she said, turning back to her screen. Thursday for the Q4 draft, he agreed, and he walked to the elevator. She worked until 5:30. She went home on the subway, one hand on the rail the way she always stood, the city rushing past the windows on the other side of the glass. She thought about Saturday. She thought about her mother's laugh on the phone. She thought about Patrick keeping that letter in a folder for 6 months, waiting for the moment it could help someone. She thought about the door she had kept shut for 2 years. She had opened it. And on the other side of it, the thing she had been most afraid to find was exactly what she had hoped for all along.